So today I'm in Huntsville, Texas on the Sam Houston State University campus, and today we're going to talk about perhaps the most important figure in all of early Texas history, Sam Houston. So there's so much I could say about Sam Houston, but I'll try to give a brief summary here in this video. He was born in Virginia in 1793 and moved to Tennessee as a young boy. He ran away from home at age 16 and lived among the Cherokee people. He fought in the War of 1812 and was well liked at a young age by Andrew Jackson. He became governor of Tennessee in the late 1820s, but resigned amid scandal in 1829. He went back to live with the Cherokees for a few years and then went to Texas in 1832. Often a person hits rock bottom just before blossoming like a yellow rose of Texas. He actually came to this state initially to negotiate with the Comanches on behalf of the many Native Americans that were being forced westward at that time. He continued to lobby on their behalf for many years, but was ultimately outnumbered and lost this fight. He was named the commander-in-chief during the Texas Revolution and led the Texan army to victory at the Battle of San Jacinto in the spring of 1836 after a long march eastward from Gonzales. During this war, he struggled to gather an army and constantly faced threats to his authority. Later that year, he was overwhelmingly elected the first president of the Republic of Texas. A new town named after him became the capital in 1837, Houston. Probably his greatest political enemies were David Burnett, the interim president after the Battle of San Jacinto, and Mirabeau Lamar, the second president of the Republic of Texas. Much of this revolved around criticism of Sam Houston's conduct during the Texas Revolution and his support of rights for Native Americans. In his second term as president in 1842, he failed in his attempt to move the capital from Austin back to the east. Houston was a close friend of Andrew Jackson and rushed to visit him when he heard his health was failing, barely missing his final breath in 1845. He then served as one of Jackson's pallbearers at his funeral. He helped in the process of getting Texas annexed into the U.S. in December of 1845 and later served as senator in the 1850s. In 1859, he was elected governor of Texas, the only person to serve in two different states, and firmly opposed secession during the Civil War. When Texas voted to secede, he refused to swear an oath of loyalty to the Confederacy and was forced out of office. He then passed away in 1863 here in Huntsville. No man is perfect, and some may point out the fact that Sam Houston did own a handful of slaves. However, from accounts that I've read, even in this regard, he was less evil than most. During his service to Texas, he was often the voice of reason in the room when others acted with hostility. He was one of the most honorable men to serve this state in the early years, and to me, he is the true father of Texas. So this is the historic Steamboat House where Sam Houston took his final breath. So now we're going to shift gears quite a bit and talk about something else that Huntsville is also known for, the Texas State Penitentiary. This was the first enclosed penitentiary for convicted felons in Texas. Construction began in 1848 near the Trinity River. Workshops were constructed to keep the inmates busy working for the benefit of the state. A mill was constructed for cotton and wool so that inmates could repay their debt to society. This was the only prison in the Confederacy still standing after the Civil War. The end of that war resulted in a large spike in crime across Texas, and the number of prisoners began to grow rapidly. In the late 1860s, prisoners began working for private individuals, and it seems to have partially filled a void left behind when slavery was abolished. I don't really know a lot about the history of prisons in Texas, but from what I understand, there were various attempts to improve conditions and education opportunities over the years. Governor Beaufort Jester, with the help of Oscar Ellis in the late 1940s, began a series of significant reforms, and through time, more education opportunities became available. Huntsville is also known for the many executions that have been performed here. Before 1923, Texas counties performed their own executions by hanging. From 1923 to 1965, it was ordered that executions were to be carried out by the state by using the electric chair. A total of 361 during this period here in Huntsville. After 1965, the death penalty was challenged in the courts, and none were carried out for a number of years. The method of execution was then changed to lethal injection, and the first was carried out in 1982. Since then, a total of 573 have been performed in Texas. Throughout time, a total of 1,328 official executions have been performed in the state of Texas as of October of 2021. Famous prisoners here at Huntsville include John Wesley Hardin, the famous Wild West outlaw, and more recently Dwayne Chapman, aka Dog the Bounty Hunter. Satanta, a famous Kiowa war chief that fought at the Battle of Adobe Walls, served time in Huntsville after admitting he participated in a series of raids. He was paroled, but forced to return after the second Battle of Adobe Walls. However, he decided he wasn't going to spend the rest of his life in prison. A few years later, in 1878, he jumped out of a window to his death.